Ink up. Slow down. Write your rhythm with script and scribe.
Hi everyone, I'm Kat, and today we are looking at this new pen that I got, the Endless Captiva, and I went for the ocean blue or deep ocean navy blue color with the Architect Nib. And as you can see, it comes in a lovely box, which is actually really straightforward to open. You just slide the whole thing out of the sleeve, and then you've got all of the information that Endless provide, including a QR code that you can scan with some information about the pen, and a really detailed way of how to fill the torque filler, which is a new system, but actually feels like a piston filler, so it's quite straightforward. I think that they did a great job providing all of this information. It makes it so easy for you to actually know what you're doing with the pen. So instead of a regular converter knob, you twist the cap to advance an internal piston, which Endless describes as having the sophistication of a piston filler with the convenience of a converter. So it's a novel filling system, but it is quick to use, and I'm going to go with Waterman blue ink to fill this up. The body is lightweight resin, so 140 millimeters, capped 20 grams in total, and it features a clear ink window on the side, which you can see much better in the actual image. Overall, it feels compact and well designed, though I do think that the cap threads are quite light. Now there you can see the window, the viewing window, and you can see all the way through to the other side. I do still feel like it's quite narrow, but I always feel that way about this viewing window style in various pens. Now the top is where you see the rotation, the little torque filler that allows you to pull the ink up into a cartridge. So you simply rotate this. It's a satisfying way of turning it, and you can see the piston going up and down within it. So let's try this, because obviously we have to fill it up through the nib. Now the angle when you're filling up doesn't really let you see the viewing window that well. At this point the filling knob has finally stopped, and we can then have a look in the window and see that it's totally full. But if you don't want to fill it all the way, I suppose you have to pause every now and then and have a quick look on your own. Now, if you've seen my recent videos, you'll know I'm on a journey to try different nibs from my usual EF and M nibs. So the Architect nibs are ground flat across like an italic nib turned 90 degrees. So they can create some dramatic line variation or noticeable line variation. In practice, this means very thin vertical strokes and very broad horizontal strokes. Now you can see that especially when I'm writing in capital letters. And what I'm going to do is actually do a comparison a little bit later with a stub nib, because I was feeling like this is very similar to a stub, but yet I feel that it's different enough, and I wanted to understand what that actually was all about. Why did I feel that it's close, but I can tell that there is a difference to my stub nib, like the 1.1 with my TWISBI Eco? So I thought, let's actually compare the two. Definitely compared to my EF, F and M nibs, it's giving my writing a bolder sort of calligraphy-like look. Maintaining a consistent angle I think also helps, which you have to do anyway with most pens, and it really showcases your writing. I can see a distinct thick-thin contrast in the cursive, but I think it's even clearer in the capital letters. But overall, I like the way that this is showcasing my writing, and I feel like it will improve the way everyone's writing looks. Also, because it does have a distinctive look to it, I think this is the sort of pen you're not going to just rush your writing, so automatically you're going to be writing more clearly. Considering the price, I think this is excellent value for money. It's just gliding across the page. It might not be as buttery smooth as my Graf on Faber Castell Tamishio, the M nib that I recently reviewed, but depending on the ink that you use, I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised. I do feel like if you went for very wet ink, it might be very generous in the way it lays down, but this is perfect with the Waterman Serenity ink that we're currently using here. The flow is just right without being too much. In short, I think this writing quality is solid. There's crisp, clean lines thanks to the way that the nib is ground, and it has a smooth feed that's not railroading. There's no hard starts. It's just, yeah, really pleasant. So we'll try the vertical up and down strokes next with starting downwards. And you can see what that looks like, and then going upwards, a little bit narrower when you go upwards with the pen at the vertical. And horizontals going from left to right and from right to left. And when researching nibs, I came across a statement that the Architect Nib is the opposite of a Stub Nib. So that was interesting to me because when you're writing with them, they look really similar, but you do feel like there is a difference. So is the Architect Nib really the opposite of a Stub Nib is what we're going to test out here by comparing this new and this Captiva pen with the TWISBI Eco that I've had for ages. It's a 1.1 stub. And here we go. We're going to go downwards and straight across, and I'm holding the pen at a vertical angle, so 90 degrees. And again, same angle, and we're going down and across. And I do notice the line variation more with my Eco than I do with the Architect Nib. Again, this is about holding the pen at a 90-degree angle, and what you're expecting to see is that the Architect produces thick horizontals and thin verticals, while the Stub does the opposite, so it produces thin horizontals and thick verticals, which we can see far clearer, I think, with the Stub. Now I'm going to hold the pen at a different angle, and what you're going to notice is that that quality changes just with the same pen. And I see the line variation far better with the Architect Nib when I hold it at this like 45-degree angle. And again, we're just doing the same down and from left to right strokes. And we're switching now to the Stub Nib, again, straight down lines and left to right, but holding the pen at a 45-degree angle rather than the 90-degree angle, and it flips it. It gives thin verticals and thick horizontals on that stub, whereas it did the opposite above. So you can get different line variation anyway with the same pens depending on the angles that you hold, but it's absolutely right. The Architect always does the opposite of what the Stub does, or what you'd expect the Stub to do, or the other way around. The Stub does the opposite of the Architect, whichever. But yeah, so they are like mirror images of each other in terms of what they do. So after doing that test, I kind of feel like TWISBI is missing a trick by not having an Architect Nib, because they've got, from extra fine through to broad, and then they've got the 1.1 stub. And I think that they could really do with an Architect Nib in their repertoire. That would be fantastic. I would definitely buy that pen. But that said, I won't need it because I have this one, and overall I think it is good value for money. I do find the pen quite light, not unpleasantly so, but it is almost flimsy in terms of this is resin, but it feels sort of plasticky. And you see it with the cap as well. So I'll put an image up of the cap where you can see how thin it is, and also the threads are quite thin. So the top one is our cap, the navy one for this Architect pen, and the bottom one is a plastic one, which is not like the navy resin, and yet the plastic one from Jinhao on a 4-pound pen is thicker and it has better threads. If you have a look at the threads, you can see that there's more of them and they're deeper on the mint green one. So I do think that in terms of the body, there could have been improvement. I reckon that if you're heavy-handed and you're used to push caps instead of thread caps, this is the sort of thread cap that you could damage by shoving it onto the pen. It definitely has the thinnest resin of my resin pens. This is comparing it with the Opus 88 Omar cap, and you can see the difference in thickness. And then again with my cheaper Kako Master, which retails for about half the price and comes with a gold-plated nib. We then go on to the color of this. I mean, I like navy, but this is so navy that it's almost black. And I also bought the Endless Captiva with the needle point nib, and they look almost identical even though it's black and navy. So I think they could really do with a range of colors for this Captiva model, because this is far too close. More striking color options definitely would be better. And with all those comparisons, it almost sounds like I'm not happy with this pen, but actually I am. It's smooth and feels like you could easily have this as an everyday writer. It gives a nice quality to your writing as well, so it's lovely for journaling, and you can see all the different effects as well in terms of how you hold the pen and which script you go for, whether that's all caps, whether you're writing slanted, as I did in the second sample there above, and whether you're holding the pen vertically but still writing cursive. So you get very different looks with the same pen, and I think that's always a nice thing. The grip section is actually really comfortable. It looks super smooth, but actually you can grip it okay, and it goes from that 13mm diameter on the barrel and steps down to like 10mm, and it's a really comfortable feel the way it rests and balances. And the nib overall, I would say, is also not just a great performer, but it's actually really attractive as far as, like a nib design goes. So if you have a look at that, it's, nice and shiny, and they've got the Endless logo on it, and you can see the tip there. It's just, really well designed. My simple criticism is more colors, please. Thicker resin, deeper threads. That's it. Thanks so much for joining me, and see you next time.